All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Environmental Infrastructure Program's first semi-annual webinar. We're really excited to have you all here today. It's a really great opportunity to, get up to speed and stay updated on our program offerings and project financing solutions as we sort of ramp up and bring everyone along in our journey. Just a few housekeeping items before we fully dive into today's agenda. The webinar runs for a full hour and a recording will be made available after the fact, so you have the option to play it back as needed. And at the very end, we'll have some time reserved for Q&A. That way, you can utilize the chat function and share your questions there. Ashley and Rudy will field some questions, but if you don't have the chance to fully get your questions addressed, you can still have the option to connect and follow up with us afterwards. By way of an introduction, my name is Janice. I'm an associate here with the Environmental Infrastructure team, joined shortly after graduating from UConn, and I've been working alongside our wonderful team in supporting implementation of environmental infrastructure solutions across all 7 of our sectors. So working more of a general program management capacity, leading on strategic planning to external communications. We can dive into the agenda for today. Our CEO, Brian Garcia, will go through introductions and provide some opening comments on our program background, conception of how we came to be as an expansion of statutory mandate. Then our director will move into our strategic outlook before our colleagues will go through Green Bank product offerings and then tie things off with a project spotlight. Then Ashley will move forward with closing thoughts before we wrap things up with Q&A for our audience. Ashley, am I missing anything? I'll hand things over to Brian then.
All right, Janice, thank you for that welcome. Good afternoon, good morning to our Green Bank colleagues and stakeholders. This is a bit of a first for us. We do this on a quarterly basis with a clean energy somewhat focus, but now we're doing our environmental infrastructure biannual presentation. So we're excited to be here with everyone. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide there, Janice. Many of you may not know the Connecticut Green Bank, so let's just do a quick introduction of who we are. So we are the nation's first green bank. We are created through an act of legislation, Public Act 1180 in July of 2011, passed on a nearly unanimous bipartisan basis of the creation of the Connecticut Green Bank. We were Section 99 of a 135 section bill, which was really seminal to the clean energy policies that we see here in the state of Connecticut. Our mission is to confront climate change. We do that by, as you'll learn today, increasing and accelerating investment into Connecticut's green economy. So we are focused on the state of Connecticut in order for us to help create more resilient, healthier, and equitable communities. Our vision statement, which was inspired by a number of people, including Mary Evelyn Tucker of the Divinity School at Yale, including Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., whose inclusive prosperity really inspired us, including Mother Jennifer of the Daughters of Mary of the Immaculate Conception, who taught us that you can't have ecology without an adequate anthropology. You can't have environmentalism without humanitarianism. So our vision is a planet protected by the love of humanity. Let's go to the next slide. Our goals. Here are our goals as an organization. The first goal is really kind of emblematic of what people think about when they think about green banks. So we leverage limited public resources to scale up and mobilize private capital investment in the green economy of Connecticut. And that's to say that we have very ambitious public policies that our legislators are passing and our governor is implementing. And our role is to ensure that there is capital available to support the implementation of those public policies. We need billions of dollars a year going into the green economy to be able to achieve those ambitious greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, now some nature-based solutions, all of the really important public policies that our legislature is passing. Our second goal is to pursue investment strategies that advance market transformation in green investing. So we currently have a Green Liberty Notes offering. So if you Google Green Liberty Notes, Connecticut Green Bank, you will see that you could purchase investments for a 1-year period to support small business energy efficiency in Connecticut. We also earlier this week just finished our third Green Liberty bond, where we sold over $18 million of bonds to institutional investors as well as retail investors, families in Connecticut, families outside of Connecticut who want to support residential solar. So we just wrapped that bond issuance up, and we will be letting everyone know how that went. So we seek market transformation while also supporting the organization's financial sustainability goals. That's to say that we aren't a grant-making organization. We focus on providing capital to projects, working with private capital players. We typically put our capital in on a subordinated basis so that we reduce the risk from our private capital partners who come in with multiples of private capital on top of that, which means that if something happens with respect to those investments, the Green Bank takes the first risk in loss in those instances, but we are attracting and mobilizing private capital investment into Connecticut's green economy. That's a typical structure for us. And then lastly is strengthening Connecticut's communities, especially our vulnerable communities. Vulnerable communities has a statutory definition, Public Act 20-05. The Take Back Our Grid Act actually created two really important definitions. One was resilience, and the second was vulnerable communities. You could think of these as environmental justice communities, Community Reinvestment Act eligible communities. Those are less than 80% area median income communities. We want to make sure that those communities have access to capital so that they could realize the benefits of the green economy that all individuals, families, and businesses in Connecticut, we hope, will receive. Let's go to the next slide. So here is a visual really of our Green Bank model. So as I was talking about, we receive public funding that we hope to leverage and attract private investment. So we're just wrapping up our FY25 audit. And over the last 14 years, we've invested about $460 million of public funding that has unlocked $2.6 to $2.7 billion of private investment for over $3.1 billion of investment in Connecticut's economy. And so that is a $1 of public to $6 of private. And that $1 of public, we aren't giving it out, we're lending it out with the expectation of those funds coming back to us over time. We do that through a number of different innovative financing tools. You're going to hear about several of them today, including credit support through our Smarty loan, co-investment through CPACE and other mechanisms, different programs that we implement ultimately to attract private investment to support those projects. And at the end of the day, when you get that investment, you see the social and environmental benefits that you're after. So that $3.1 billion has enabled the creation of over 30,000 jobs in our communities. Jobs and investment create tax revenues. We've helped raise over $150 million of sales tax, property tax, individual and corporate tax. That investment in clean energy has helped deploy over 700 megawatts of clean energy, supporting families and businesses and reducing energy costs. Of course, as those systems produce clean power, they also clean the air. As a result of that, we can not only quantify the reduction in air pollution and CO2 emissions within that, but we could also speak to how much public health savings is resulting. So we're actually reducing hospitalizations and sick days. So we're reducing public health care costs anywhere between $250 million to $400 million as a result of cleaner air. Over this 14 years, I think we've had, based on our recent numbers, over 52% of investment has gone to vulnerable communities. So we want to ensure that we're enabling and unlocking investment in vulnerable communities in Connecticut. One of our new E's, so you can kind of see the 5 E's down there, newest members is the ecosystem E. and we will be working to develop our social and environmental impact metrics for ecosystems. Let's go and go to the next slide. So what was the pathway here? There were several pathways here, but the really big and important one was the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, was running a year-long planning process through the Governor's Council on Climate Change and released this report in January of 2021. If you go a year back, you would notice that we were literally navigating through COVID. I've never seen a better public process that engaged people in light of and within the conditions of COVID. DEEP just did an extraordinary job engaging local groups, citizens to provide their feedback. Ultimately, this came into a report that went to the governor in January 2021. One of the recommendations within that report was to expand the scope of the Connecticut Green Bank beyond clean energy to include environmental infrastructure. So the governor proposed Public Act, what ultimately became Public Act 21-115, which was a bipartisan supported bill, including Section 99 and a few sections beyond, that expanded the scope of the Connecticut Green Bank to include environmental infrastructure that we're going to learn about today. All of that gets built into the comprehensive plan of the Connecticut Green Bank. We're required by statute, our board, to have a comprehensive plan that guides our work. You could learn about all of this. You could read all these reports if you want, but you could also just click that button there and listen to an AI podcast on our comprehensive plan that includes a very detailed overview of environmental infrastructure. Let's go to the next slide. So when that policy passed in June of 2021, we went to our planning. We actually planned a retreat that we had in the early part of 2022. We called our retreat, Confronting Climate Change in the Constitution State Through Environmental Infrastructure. If you actually hyperlink to this page here, you'll see a video that shows what we had envisioned coming out of that strategic retreat. But more importantly, I'm just giving you a little snippet of our governance here, our board of directors. Governance is really, really important, especially as we are expanding and broadening our mission. We have a number of board members. I'm just highlighting a few here because they have specific expertise in various areas of environmental infrastructure, including Dominic Grant, who leads and works as a director at Dirt Capital, who brings a perspective not only on agriculture, but land conservation and environmental finance, conservation finance more broadly. Adrian Ferraruel, many of you may know Adrian. Adrian's incredible. She leads the Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises. Beyond all of the work that she's doing there on mattress recycling, product take-back laws and provisions, she's just incredible in terms of leading a community and bringing forth a vision by engaging citizens within the community. So Adrian serves on our board. Dr. Joanna Wozniak-Brown, another incredible member to the board. When Public Act 21-115 passed, it also included another member to the board, which was the Office of Policy and Management. And we were super excited that the governor and his team chose Joanna to serve on our board. She's an incredibly knowledgeable individual on a number of climate things, specifically resilience, and has just been a breath of fresh air for us in terms of governance and just working alongside them. And then more recently, First Selectman Jamie Cosgrove from the town of Branford has joined our board. And if you look at what the town of Branford has been doing, they are very much practicing not only a clean energy vision, but an environmental infrastructure vision. So we're happy to have a local practitioner. So just wanted to highlight a few members of our board, because when you go from policy, you then have to go to implementation, and governance is a really important part of that, as well as, let's go to the next slide, you need to build the team in order to deliver the impact that our policymakers had envisioned. I'm going to introduce Lee Welton here, our fearless director, in a second. You all got to know Janice at the outset. We've got Austin, who's a senior manager on the team, and Ashley, a manager on the team, who all collectively together are working to really help us realize this vision for how we can mobilize more investment in environmental infrastructure in our state so that our green economy and our families and businesses can realize all the benefits from that economy. All right, so let me transition now to our fearless leader of the team, Lee Welpton, our Director of Environmental Infrastructure, who joins us from having been the Director of the Conservation Finance Network for years. So let me turn it over to you, Lee.
All right, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful context and table setting there, Brian, especially as the Green Bank is expanding beyond clean energy. Wonderful to have folks with us on this, the first of a new series of semi-annual update webinars. And as Brian mentioned, part of that expansion in 2021, that bipartisan act of the legislature, the Green Bank's authority expanded from clean energy to environmental infrastructure. And importantly to note, that definition of environmental infrastructure in statute encompasses structures, facilities, system services, and improvement projects, all related to water, waste and recycling, climate adaptation and resilience, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, and environmental markets. So as we've been standing up this new business unit, the team you just saw on the last slide, we've developed a three-part strategy to help organize how we're going about putting these new authorities to use. So if we could go to the next slide here. Great, thank you. First and foremost, expanding existing Green Bank programs to include aspects of environmental infrastructure, whether that's floodproofing, septic well, impervious to pervious surface conversion, and other new measures under our Smarty Home Lending Program that our colleague Barbara will be speaking to in just a moment, or broader resilience guidance added to the state CPACE program and being currently explored through our own programmatic CPACE strategies here at the Green Bank, which our colleague Elise will speak to in a moment. So too, the second strategy, pursuing opportunistic and mission-aligned project financing opportunities through our Capital Solutions Open Rolling RFP, which our colleague Austin will speak to after a few more minutes. And then longer term, really thinking about those ways to engage in market development and strategic program design to think about not just what we currently have, expanding existing, not just those things that on a project basis are catalytic and important to get through, but also longer term, what new financing programs, what new market animation can the Green Bank be doing to really meet our mission. In terms of our comprehensive plan goals, I have those outlined here. So you can see we are on deck this year to try and close 15 projects associated with our Smarty loan and 2 projects associated with that open rolling RFP, Green Bank Capital Solutions, for a total deployment of 5.1 with 2.5 million of Green Bank capital out the door. So that's a little bit. You can read a heck of a lot more in our FY26 comprehensive plan. Next slide. So I'll be quick on this one, but the statutory definition of environmental infrastructure being as broad as it is, it was also important in establishing our team strategy 1, 2, 3 to also think about how we would prioritize potential involvement of our deployments. And the kind of quick and simple math on that is that we're prioritizing those projects and endeavors that can generate both social and ecological resilience benefits. There's a lot of focus these days on something called nature-based solutions, which we are certainly big fans of. So too, there's a bit of confusion sometimes with how the terminology gets used. This slide is just really meant to explain nature-based solutions being an encompassing term about actions that can effectively mimic natural processes to accomplish those types of benefits that are important both to ecology and to human communities. Green infrastructure being a way that you can go about accomplishing that. Gray infrastructure still being an important aspect of how engineering systems can deliver benefits for people in an infrastructure context or otherwise. And then hybrid, the way that often is the case, you can have aspects of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure paired with more traditional infrastructure. Think about appropriately sized culverts, for example, to get to an outcome that works for all. So just to kind of orient folks in how we are prioritizing and defining our approaches under both the statutory definition and in the context of our strategy 1, 2, 3. All right, and I think with that, I will pass it over to Barbara to talk a little bit more about SMART-E.
Actually, I'll introduce Barbara. Hey, thank you, Lee, and thank you, Barbara. My name is Ashley Stewart. I'm with the Environmental Infrastructure Program, the Manager of Community Engagement. And I wanted to share that I'm excited to highlight our existing products with a special focus on how these programs have expanded into environmental infrastructure areas and resilience. Just to remind you all that our mandate covers water, waste and recycling, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, environmental markets, and resilience. So I just want to welcome Barbara, the director of the SMART-E program, to share more details on her specific program.
Thank you, Ashley. Next slide, please. So what is the SMART-E loan? It is an unsecured personal loan for clean energy and resilience improvements. We focus on owner-occupied residential properties, can be anywhere from 1 to 4 units in the state of Connecticut. We've been around since 2013, and until 2023, we were really focused on our energy efficiency and clean energy measures as listed here. Once the legislature gave us the expanded scope to focus on environmental infrastructure, we have worked to add climate resiliency measures such as septic and well repair, flood proofing. You'll see, we'll talk about them on the next slide. Loan amounts go from $500 to $50,000 with terms from 5 to 15 years. And it's a very flexible product. There's no money down, fixed monthly payments, flexible terms, and coverage. So you can see there our current rates between 5 and 15 years go from 6.99 to 7.99%. And currently we have 7 lenders in the state of Connecticut who offer the SMART-E loan. Next slide, please. When we talk about benefits for homeowners, they're affordable and stable rates that are based on the term of the loan. They can roll up multiple measures into one loan. So for example, if someone needs to have their trees trimmed or cut down in order to put solar panels on their roof, a portion of that loan can be dedicated to the tree trimming. In addition, when you're dealing with SMART-E, you're talking to Connecticut-based lenders who are real people and close to home, and maybe the bank that you already use. For contractors, we offer no dealer fees, so they don't have to worry about paying off or sacrificing a certain part of their income to dealer fees. However, we offer them the opportunity to partner with lenders to lower the rates to make their product more appealing. And as I mentioned before, with the multiple measures, they can cross-sell and upsell, and SMART-E funds will fund the entire project. For lenders, we bring in new customers that they can be cross-sold as well, and they can get branded as a green and sustainable bank or credit union. And since 2013, in the 12 and a half years that we've been around, here are some of the results that we've had. Almost 2,000 direct and indirect job years created, just shy of 600,000 lifetime tons of CO2 avoided. We've had 172 million in loans, and only 6.2 million of green bank investment, which was interest rate buy downs using federal dollars. And when Brian talked earlier in regards to using public capital to drive private investment, SMART-E does that at the ratio of 32 to 1. So this is a very, very efficient product to help bring clean energy efficiency and environmental resiliency to the state. Next slide, please. These are the measures that we was talking about earlier. You can see, I'm not going to read them, but you can see all the different ways that we support flood proofing contractors, for landscaping contractors, for plumbing. Replacing lead pipes has become a very, very important factor, and we're looking to see how we can partner with communities as they have to repair and replace the lead pipes that may be present in their homeowner systems. Septic and well drilling, we've focused on quite a bit, as we don't see that there's significant financing that's used in that sector, and people often have to resort to dramatic means in order to get the funds, because when your well goes dry, you need water, and when your septic tank is not working anymore, you need to make it work again. And we've heard stories of people refinancing their homes in order to get this kind of work done. So we think there's a great need there for the SMARTY loan. Next slide, please. So how have we done? It took us a little while to identify the climate resilience measures that we wanted to incorporate into SMARTY. So although the legislation was in 2021, it took us until January 2024 to identify and then figure out how we would support the first measures. We added additional measures in spring of 2024 and then November of 2024. So if we consider our launch period, January 2024 through July of 2025, we had 8 projects that totaled just over 146,000 in loans, mostly flood proofing. There was a well repair, a septic replacement, and one elevating and relocating HVAC equipment. We had a slower start, I think, than many of us anticipated. But as we got into it, and at the time I was handling contractor outreach, our program depends entirely on enrolled contractors. Those are the ones that do the work, and contractors cannot do the work unless they enroll in our program. So we needed to onboard entirely new categories of contractors, and many of whom either had available financing or did not use financing in their daily operations. So I know of people who, need to get their septic done, and they just get an estimate for $30,000 saying that half is due up front and half is due when the work is done, but there's no mention of financing. So we had to get those contractors to really think differently about the way that they operate, and that process is still going. Next slide, please. So what can we expect in the next fiscal year? Well, I can say that in the last 3 months, we've already had 5 climate resilience projects that have been approved and closed, totaling almost $107,000. Flood proofing, septic, and well repair. So our jobs are coming in at 3 times the rate during the launch period. And in just the first quarter, we've deployed almost 75% of the total funds that we lent during the 18-month launch period. So we think that the work that we put into meeting the contractors and understanding the way that they work and working with them to get them on board is really paying off here. However, there is still significant work to be done to onboard these contractors, especially well, septic, and flood proofing. These seem to be the best type of jobs for SMARTY. But these contractors, as I mentioned, are the ones that either had other financing or are not using financing. We're getting, the early adopters of these contractors to come on board, and they're finding it really successful and a great way for them to help their customers with some very high ticket jobs. I mentioned the contractor outreach role. Right now, it's currently empty, but we're working to have it filled by the new year. So that wraps up SMARTY, and I think there's a lot of growth that we will see in this area in SMARTY over the next few months. That's it.
Thank you, Barbara. That was a great update on the Smarty expansion, and you're right, it is exciting to see it grow and what will come out of the next year. As Brian mentioned, our programs are designed for homes, contractors, buildings, and communities. And Elise, the Director of Program Development, will talk more about the growth of our CPACE commercial lending product. Elise, could you join the conversation?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Ashley. Good afternoon, everybody. So if we could go to the next slide here. So just a quick level set on what is CPACE. CPACE is a product that the Green Bank administers. It stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. So it's a little bit different than some of the traditional construction loans or commercial loans that folks might see. We'll talk about that here in a second. But you'll notice a theme as the expansion Public Act 226 and the other environmental bill that Brian and Lee were mentioning, as those entered the scene, all of our programs and products were able to expand to offer new exciting options for the products that we have. So CPACE is no exception to that. CPACE traditionally was created in 2012 to offer clean energy financing for commercial properties. So commercial properties include things like traditional office buildings, institutional buildings, industrial buildings, etc. Multifamily properties of 5 units or greater also fall under that commercial category, as well as nonprofits. But with the expansion into environmental infrastructure, we are now also able to offer financing for resilience improvements through CPACE, along with EV charging infrastructure as well. So those are two exciting additions to the program. But generally, the CPACE financing option here is long-term funding for up to 25 years with low interest rates available. And what kind of sets it apart from other financing, aside from the long terms, 25 years is a pretty long term for a loan, but something that really sets it apart is that it's an assessment that gets placed on the property. So it's secured through that assessment. The property owner will make payments over time through that assessment. The repayment cycle follows whatever the tax cycle is in that particular town. So, whether that's semi-annual, which is most towns in Connecticut, or maybe quarterly or annually, depending. But another benefit that we see property owners really enjoy is that the assessment is, since it's on the property itself, it remains with the property. So regardless of who owns that property, the assessment will stay with it, along with all of the wonderful energy saving components or resilience components that will come along with that. So again, a little bit different than a traditional loan, but something that we've had a lot of success with over the years on the clean energy side. So if we go to the next slide here. So I mentioned that the Green Bank, we are the administrator of the CPACE program in Connecticut, which means statutorily, we are the ones that are able to approve projects, make sure that they meet all of the programmatic and statutory requirements. And we're also the ones that are tasked with creating guidelines for this program. So with the expansion into resilience and EV charging infrastructure through that Public Act, that meant that we had to come up with new guidelines and appendices and new things to add into the program. So what I'm showing you here is the definition of resilience. This is the statutory definition of resilience. And if you've read this as I'm talking, you'll see that it's very, very broad. And Lee mentioned the broad definition of nature-based solutions and other definitions that we've got, and this is no different. So we wanted to make sure that we were kind of encompassing everything that this definition was telling us into our guidelines, but also coming up with things that also supported our mission as the Green Bank as well in terms of confronting climate change. So if we go to the next slide. So this is kind of what we came up with. We created an appendix, a resilience appendix to our CPACE program guidelines. And what you see here are some of the examples that were included in those guidelines. So we focused on climate adaptation examples and also nature-based solutions, which Lee spoke about earlier. But this gives you kind of an idea of where we were trying to focus our efforts as we were expanding into resilience with CPACE financing. We go to the next slide. And another thing that we also were excited to think about is the ability for us to include an existing construction and re-roofing standard that was already existing through the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, which is called Fortified. This is kind of a resilience standard. So similar, I guess you can think of things like LEED or WELL, you know, where there are standards that you follow. And we were able to incorporate Fortified into our guidelines as an option for folks to follow for resilience improvements as well. So we were excited to be able to add this in. I think that this is something that the Smarty team, I believe, is thinking about as well. And we've seen other PACE organizations in other parts of the country think about using this standard for resilience improvements in their own districts as well. So excited to be able to include this in our guidelines. And then on the last slide here, so this is just quickly kind of giving you some of the requirements that come along with CPACE financing for resilience. So the first one here on the left, the exemptions, there is no savings to investment ratio requirement. So if anybody is familiar with CPACE and the clean energy side of CPACE, there's a requirement that the savings from the clean energy improvements that are being installed outweigh the actual investment, you know, what the property owner is going to be repaying. With resilience, there is no savings to investment ratio requirement. However, the new requirement is that there needs to be a resilience study completed with the assessment of cost savings included. So while there's no minimum in terms of what that cost savings needs to be, we do still need to see a calculation and a study that was completed to show, you know, what that cost savings could look like. So that needs to be included, but there is no minimum. And all of their standards for CPACE eligibility are still applicable. It's available to retrofit projects or new construction. So retrofit is, you know, an existing property where they're replacing something with something else, or new construction. So, you know, gut renovations or actual ground up construction. Needs to be a commercial property, so it needs to still be, you know, an office building, an industrial facility, nonprofit, multifamily, etc. Municipality needs to be participating, which we have a list of those participating municipalities on our website, but most towns in the state are now participating to be able to offer CPACE financing. So that's rarely an issue that comes up these days. And then there's also consent that is required if that's applicable. So what that is if there's an existing mortgage on the property. I mentioned in my first slide when I was talking about what CPACE is, that it's a municipal assessment that gets placed on the property. And it's a senior assessment. So that means that if any other assessments are on the property, such as a mortgage, we require that we need to get consent for CPACE to take that first position. And that still does apply for resilience projects as well. And then on the right here, you see all of the requirements. So we have these, the pre-study worksheet. This isn't a requirement per se, but it's highly recommended that you complete that. Either a contractor, developer, capital provider, or the property owner. Just kind of gives you a good idea of maybe what you can do in terms of resilience improvements. The resilience study is required. We have those guidelines on what needs to be included in all of those sub-bullets in our appendix. And then if you are using the Fortified standard, all of the supporting documentation and applicable forms all need to be included in that as well. And the last thing I'll mention before I turn it back over to Ashley here is that currently, even though this pathway for CPACE is available and ready to use, currently only our third-party capital providers are able to offer this option in terms of financing. I mentioned the Green Bank is the administrator of the program. We're also one of about 20 different approved capital providers in the program as well. So we are currently working with our board to come up with a lending policy. So we will be able to hopefully offer financing for resilience projects as well. But currently, as it stands today, third-party capital providers are the only ones that can finance these projects for resilience. And I think that wraps up. Yeah, Ashley, back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elise. We will wrap up this section of the webinar with an update on our Capital Solutions product. This product has expanded its use with the environmental infrastructure expansion. Austin, the senior manager within the environmental infrastructure program, will give information about this product. Austin?
Thanks, Ashley. My name is Austin Zicke, and thank you everyone for joining today. Building off of the presentations on our Smart E and CPACE products, the Green Bank Capital Solutions is essentially a third product to consider for projects out there that don't meet the programmatic criteria of our existing products and offerings. The Capital Solutions program was approved by the Green Bank Board of Directors to allow for review and competitive selection and award through an open request for proposals process. You can find that RFP on the Green Bank Capital Solutions website. If you look for the link for that open request for proposals, it will take you there and you can find a lot of additional information, but I'll speak through it at a high level today. Functionally, this is how we can engage with the market on projects that are aligned with the goals outlined in our comprehensive plan and within our primers for environmental infrastructure. It enables us to have a broad authority and tool to engage with the market and help attract and seed investment and beneficial projects for the state. So it's, again, quite broad and enables us to explore a lot across these other sectors, whereas Smart E and CPACE are focused on the residential home and commercial building opportunities specifically. This enables us to work more directly with businesses or projects that fall outside those categories. And so as we're exploring bespoke project finance opportunities, we're also learning a lot about where the market in each of these sectors are in Connecticut and what kinds of financial assistance can help accelerate outcomes aligned with the state's environmental goals in each of these sectors. So I just wanted to highlight these primers, which we'll speak to later in the presentation, as a source to get a sense of what the state's goals under each of the sectors are and what the environmental infrastructure program's goals are for each of these sectors as well. You can go to the next slide, Ashley. And thinking about this as a tool to accelerate outcomes, environmental outcomes in the state and attract aligned investment in real and grounded projects, there's a set of criteria that we use to determine what is really aligned with those goals. And first and foremost, the project needs to be investable. So I'll repeat it again. These are loans, not grants, and so there needs to be a clear capacity to repay. On the next slide, I will speak a little bit more about what makes something investable. And I just mentioned a little bit about what makes it aligned with our mission and the EI program, but the primers, again, are a great resource for that. Additionally, beyond that, we're really interested in thinking about how to accelerate market outcomes and leverage the private capital markets and businesses within the state to accelerate environmental outcomes. So any projects that are emerging as a strategy or new area for growth, where they potentially represent repeatable and scalable transactions, are really attractive to us. We can use capital solutions for one-off bespoke projects, and there's certainly a lot of benefit to doing that when those opportunities exist. But we can also use capital solutions for the Green Bank to engage in new types of projects for our organization and explore where there's potential to develop new programs. Another criteria to think about that creates that strong alignment is if there's a clear and demonstrable market gap within the state where private capital is not currently engaged, able to engage for some reason, but there's potential to move those private capital markets into that position. And so when there's that market gap, and you could think about this with nature-based solutions where a conventional bank may simply not have developed a position on that, but we don't see any technological risk there. The Green Bank can put in some of that extra effort to understand the project and figure out how the financing and repayment works with something like ecosystem services or some new kind of contracted cost savings. And so we really find a strong use case where there's a solvable market gap that we think we can help demonstrate. And similarly, where there's a lot of capacity and familiarity and interest within specific sectors or businesses to go and successfully achieve some kind of new additional impact enabled by our financing, aligned with the state's policy objectives and goals across the environmental infrastructure sectors. Ashley, you can go to the next slide. And I want to just talk for a moment about what makes a project bankable. And so if you are out there with your own project that you're trying to accomplish, or speaking with stakeholders or partners that you think might be a good candidate or have a need for financing that's different than a need for a grant, some things that can help determine whether the Green Bank might be a relevant or strategic partner is really thinking about what that capacity for repayment is. So are there a clear line of sight on project revenues, sources of repayment? Does the project or organization, have they managed debt before? Do they have too much debt and that's why banks won't lend to a project? That's not necessarily an indicator that it's a good fit for us, but those are some of the kind of questions you'll want to ask yourself to understand, is this a financially viable investment? We're willing to do the work to understand how a project creates environmental impact and understand how a loan would be repaid, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily putting capital at risk just to support certain projects. It still needs to pencil out in a productive way. Similarly, on that front, we'll want to know and understand what the potential for security for a loan is, whether there's liens against real estate or assignments of potential contracted revenue or grants or other means of value that can help secure a loan. And then overall as well, I'd want to just state that while we are really willing to roll up our sleeves and understand a project, how it works, how it delivers impact, this isn't necessarily venture capital or private equity. We're not seeking to take technological risk or business risk. And so we would want to understand that whatever it is that the project relies on to be successful, it's not novel, and that we can see a demonstrated track record that suggests there's a high likelihood of success. And that can be business risk or technological risk as well. And overall, you can think of this as project finance. I'd say that's the primary way we think about deploying capital here. And typically we're looking for projects somewhere between that $1 and $10 million transaction size, maybe 1 to 5 million is a sweet spot, but for a really strong project, we can go up to 10. Something below that might not be a good fit for the amount of time and effort it takes to get a loan of this nature. And as well, I think another area of inquiry that you'll want to be prepared to discuss with us is where you're at in your project development story or your business history or your program history. You know, is the project permitted, or is that a major categorical risk that, you know, might stop something? I think we would need to see all the plans and designs to suggest that this is something that's shovel ready and can be successfully executed. And then as well, another good question to ask yourself is, have you talked with other capital providers? We often don't take on the full capital stack for a project. You know, we participate, and we want to be thinking about what other capital that we're mobilizing into this space through our participation. So if a project can get funding or financing from a bank on its own, it may not be a good fit for the Green Bank. But if you have a really good project that you think can work, and you have a bank or other capital providers that are interested in the project and believe in it, but you still need additional capital, oftentimes that's a really good stage in the project to come and talk to the Green Bank. And we can jump to the next slide here. And so if you are yourself thinking of developing a project and looking for sources of financing, or know someone that is and fit some of that description I just walked through, I would start by looking at our website and going through that open rolling RFP, where there's a little more specific description of investment criteria and alignment, and to see if it seems like a good fit. And then generally, we like to start with getting to know you, getting to know the project, and understanding how finance enables your organization or your business or the project to accomplish its goals, how it fits within your overall mission, and how your track record demonstrates your capacity and readiness for finance. And so we can start with that conversation and see if it's a good fit from there, but then you'll want to have project materials prepared and ready for review. If it seems like something that is worth pursuing and that there might be a fit for, generally it would take us a couple months to review those materials, do some underwriting, consider it internally, and then we can think about drafting terms and discuss them mutually. And then if we do land on an agreement on draft terms, it would take several months to go through our approval process and closing until that capital is really available. So if you're in need of capital within 1 month, 2 months time, that might not be a long enough process to enable us to adequately consider the loan. But I think if you have several months ahead of you and you're thinking about those capital plans, that's really a good time to start talking with us. Or if you're even before then, we're willing to have those conversations when you're anticipating these needs. So I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, Austin, this is great material, and we will be providing the slides and the recording for folks to review after if they need to look into the details a little bit more. So in the interest of time, we're going to move quickly to the project spotlight and hopefully still have a moment for a question. Lee, could you give us, join us?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we've only got 4 minutes left. So I'll just say quick project spotlight. Next slide. For ice cream lovers and fans of the Farmer's Cow brand dairy products, we wanted to just tell you about a loan, but certainly we can share materials on it. $850,000 loan to Fort Hill Agrid LLC in 2020 that helped to catalyze the state's first farm waste to energy facility and to support the state's public policy goal for self-sufficiency. So looking for, much like Austin just said, similar opportunities to be in this sweet spot of both catalytic project finance and also meeting the mission of supporting public policy objectives. So I'll hang it up there in preference for getting to audience questions, any that we can allow.
Thank you, Lee. The last section, as we wind down this first environmental infrastructure webinar, I just want to share with attendees that we have, could you go to the next slide? We have now a full suite of environmental infrastructure primers for you all to engage with. Within the primers, you'll find resources listed on the market, resources within the market, policy that's driving funding and programming across each of the sectors, and then opportunity areas that we are finding to engage in each of the sectors. These are public documents, and they're accessible on our landing page, the environmental infrastructure landing page within the Green Bank's website. Please take some time, look at them. These are labors of love that we are excited to continue to dig into each of the sectors. Next slide. In wrapping up our very first webinar to give you all updates, I just want to remind the attendees that they can engage with this program and our staff. We have a contact list on our landing page website. Please consider joining our contact list, and also looking out for our next semi-annual webinar in the spring of 2026. And everyone who is registered for this webinar will receive a follow-up email with the recording and slides from this presentation. So rounding this off to say thank you to all the presenters, thank you to all the attendees that have joined us for this hour. If there are any questions, we would love to get those questions addressed, but also if you go to the next slide, you can always follow up with us if you have any questions after this session. And yeah, just continue to engage with us. Okay, since we're at the hour, we're gonna just call it and thank you all without doing questions, but hopefully we'll be able to do that through email or through correspondence. So thank you all again. This has been a great hour, tons of content, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future.